Welcome to the Duathlon Show. This episode, Tour de France 2024 preview. I've heard Paris is Nice this time of year. In this episode, we'll preview the American riders who'll be at the Tour this year. France was the first friend the baby United States of America ever had. The Frogs jumped in off the top rope to land a flying elbow on the British Redcoats during the American War of Independence. We Yankees paid our Frenchy friends back by providing a helpful ideology once the Bourbon dynasty's freaky little project unwound in the face of the sans-culottes and their determination to shave all enemies with the national razor. Fun fact. Guillaume Martin is the pro bike rider with the name that sounds most similar to guillotine. Now, just 164 glorious years after the Mediterranean city of Nice left Italy and was annexed to France, the world will watch the 111th Tour de France start in Florence, Italy, and end with a time trial in Nice, France. The traditional final stage in Paris is being replaced with the Nice TT because of the Paris Olympics, which begin July 26th. The tour ends July 21st, simply too soon for the city to host both events. Thus our episode subtitle, I've heard Paris is Nice this time of year. As I announced during last year's TDF episode, the Duathlon Show has a firm international focus, but I am, of course, American. You can tell by the accent. And I'm excited to bring you this special preview of the American pro cyclists who'll be riding in the Tour de France 2024. The tour begins June 29th with 3 stages in Italy before the 4th stage, where they'll bike from Pinerolo in Italy to Val-Loire in France, a 138-kilometer or 85-mile stage with no custom stop at the border. Why the start in Italy, you may ask? Turns out you can just pay the race org a bunch of money and they'll come to your country for a few stages. Last year's tour featured 6 Americans. The preceding years saw 7, 4, 3, 4, 5, and 3 riders from the States make the cut. This year there will be, drum roll please, 3 Americans riding the TDF. I'll tell you all about them next. But first, let me tell you who rode last year but won't be back this year. Kevin Vermaarke. The DSM Firmenich Post-NL rider already rode a Grand Tour at the Giro d'Italia this season, so it's not surprising to not see him back this year after 2 consecutive years of riding the Tour. Riding both the Giro and the Tour is relatively rare among pro riders these days. Lawson Craddock will also not be returning to the Tour. He's had a number of DNFs at races this year, including the Tour de Suisse most recently. Lacking an outstanding start, it's not surprising to see the veteran domestique left off Team Jayco's roster this time. Quinn Simmons will also be out. Last year's USA Road Race National Champion hasn't raced since March for the Lidl Trek team. He was described in May by the publication Velo as, quote, recovering from a rough spring, in an article about him not riding this year's national championship race. And finally, Sepp Kuss is a last-minute scratch for the Visma Lease Bike team. He was on the official team announcement before being ruled out on June 25th due to COVID. Quote, Kuss struggled at the Dauphiné and he was a non-starter on the final day. Visma stated on Tuesday that he had abandoned the race with mild COVID-19 symptoms. After a week, he seemed to have recovered enough to ride the Tour de France, but in recent days that upward trend stagnated. That was from Cycling News. The Coloradan Kuss was a core part of his team's success last year when under the Jumbo-Visma name they won all 3 Grand Tours. Sepp was a super domestique for Primož Roglic's victory at the Giro d'Italia, played the same helper role for Jonas Vingegaard at the Tour, and then finally shocked the cycling world by actually winning the Vuelta a España himself. That Vuelta win was made even more impressive by the fact that his main competition were his 2 Galactico teammates, Roglic and Jonas. It'll surely be a big disappointment for Sepp to miss out on the Tour this year. Two other prominent Americans not riding the Tour this year are Brandon McNulty and Magnus Sheffield. Brandon has had a tremendous year so far. He won the Volta Valenciana, a time trial stage at the UAE Tour, came third in Paris-Nice, won the GP Indurain one-day race, won another TT stage at the Tour de Romandie, won the US National Championships in time trial, and came second in the National Championships road race. He rode the Tour in 2021 and 2022, but not last year, and will not be back again this year. He will be training instead for the Olympics, where he'll be racing the time trial and the road race. That should be adequate compensation for missing the Tour this year. Like McNulty, the 22-year-old Ineos Grenadiers rider Magnus Sheffield is a strong time trialist and one-day racer. That dual nature is the main reason he will also be joining McNulty at the Olympics in Paris this year. With only 3 male riders on the US team, it makes sense to select someone who has a good shot at both road cycling events. Magnus has a fair shot at a top 10 in the TT and can also be a helper for a teammate in the road race. He could even win the road race himself if he gets into the right group and breaks away on the right hill. He won a Belgian classic, the Brabantse Pijl, back in 2022, and he's been top 3 in a few time trials so far this year. He did race the Giro d'Italia in May, so it isn't surprising to see him not selected for Ineos' Tour team. With all the non-starters out of the way, it's time to finally introduce the Americans who will be on their bikes in France this summer for the Le Tour. First up is Neilson Powless. This will be his 5th Tour in a row for the American team EF Education EasyPost. In last year's Tour preview, I wondered whether Neilson would be riding for the race's general classification lead or for individual stage wins. The answer turned out to be stages. While he didn't win any, he ended up in 6 breakaways and finished 4th in the King of the Mountains competition. I'd expect Neilson and his team to take the same stage hunting strategy this year. A longer stage, something like 200 kilometers or 125 miles, favors a rider like Powless, who isn't the lightest or most explosive climber, but has extremely high durability on tough hilly days. Second American rider will be Matteo Jorgensen. Matteo has had an incredible season so far. He won the prestigious Paris-Nice week-long stage race in March, beating Belgian sensation Remco Evenepoel. Then he won the hilly Belgian classic Dwars-Vlaanderen. Now he's entering the Tour right off a 2nd place GC finish at the Criterium du Dauphiné week-long race, only 8 seconds behind Slovenian ski jumper turned cycling superstar Primož Roglič in that race. Matteo's Visma Lease bike team comes into the Tour this year with a lot of uncertainty. 2-time Tour champion Jonas Vingegaard, or Vingegaard, will be the main GC leader, but he hasn't raced since a big crash at the Tour of the Basque Country in April. His condition is the race's biggest unknown. Matteo will be going into the race as Visma's leader 1B to Jonas's 1A. He's never had a top GC finish in a Grand Tour in his young career, but this will be his first Grand Tour with his new team Visma, the team famous in recent times for building winning Grand Tour riders. Jonas, the unfortunately absent Sepp Kuss, and the no longer with the team Primož Roglič are testament to that. If Matteo has a good GC race, he just has to beat Remco again, and then he'll most likely win the white jersey for best young rider in the Tour. Who knows? If he ends up being stronger than his teammate Jonas Vingegaard, and Jonas falls out of the GC race, it might mean that we'll see this 2-time defending TDF champion working on behalf of the 24-year-old American on high mountain stages. Managers at Matteo's team have been making a big to-do in the media this week about how Vingegaard will be the undisputed GC leader, and saying that Jorgensen will be in a definitive helper role. If you ask me, that sounds like a bit of a smokescreen. Jonas is coming off major injuries, and no one knows how much his fitness, specifically his aerobic base, has recovered. All his major rivals have had better preparations for this race than Jonas, we can say that much for sure. No one, not even Jonas Vingegaard, knows what his fitness will look like in the third week of the toughest Grand Tour. You can't simulate that sort of stress and tiredness in training. Which is all to say that I betcha that despite what they're saying now, I think the Visma team will keep Matteo Jorgensen as a protected rider deep into the race, even if that's as a 1B to the 1A. Don't expect Matteo to be put into traditional domestique roles in the early and middle parts of this race unless he's already lost a bunch of time of his own accord. The third and final American cyclist who'll be riding Le Grand Boucle is a Tour debutant, Sean Quinn. Fresh off a slightly unexpected win at the U.S. National Road Race Championships, this 24-year-old will be part of the stage-hunting EF Education Easy Post squad. That means he'll be a teammate of Neilson Powless. He won't be wearing EF's bright pink jersey though. Look for Sean in the broad stripes and bright stars of the red, white, and blue USA National Champions jersey. You can't miss it. Just look for the skinny bike rider in the Captain America costume on your television set. In fact, picture skinny Chris Evans from the beginning of the first Captain America movie, in the first act before he gets jacked and becomes the captain. Picture that. Sean won the US Natties from a small group of 3, beating Brandon McNulty and Powless. While he benefited from the fact that he and Nielsen as EF teammates outnumbered UAE's McNulty, you still have to make the front group and stick with it in order to win a race like that. And you still have to win the ultimate sprint, which Sean did against a tired McNulty. Sean Quinn's main strengths are as a climber or hilly rider. EF will probably be a pretty wide open team in terms of letting lots of riders shoot their shot at a stage win, but Sean's probably not in the same stage winning potential category as his teammate Powless, at least not yet, even if he did just beat him at the national championships. If Team EF does end up working for a GC leader, it will be their Ecuadorian star and outgoing Olympic road race champion from Tokyo, Richard Carapaz. He's won GC at the Giro d'Italia before, but he's also had a lot of Grand Tour races where he lost a bunch of time and ended up racing for stages. Sean will probably end up working as a domestique or helper for Richard Carapaz in some stages in either case. He may also work to help Powless or other teammates such as new Italian national champion Alberto Bettiol go for stages. But I bet we'll see Sean make an impact in his own right in a breakaway or two during this race, even if I don't think he will ultimately win a stage. Those are the 3 Americans who made the cut for the Tour de France. 2 for Team EF Education Easy Post, and 1 for Team Visma Lisa Bike. But we can't finish this episode without giving a shout out to an honorary American, Juan Ayuso. Juan is a 21-year-old phenom riding for the UAE Team Emirates outfit. While technically his name has a Spanish flag next to it, we're giving him honorary American status because of his early life history. I'll quote from an interview he gave a few years ago to Cycling News. "I was born in Barcelona, but when I was 1, we moved to Atlanta, Georgia. My dad had to go for work, so the whole family went there. We left when I was nearly 5. Because I lived in Atlanta, when I came back to Spain, I've always been in an English school system because my parents didn't want me to lose my English." So there you have it, folks. One of Tadej Pogačar's most talented young teammates is an honorary American with A-Town roots. If you listen to an interview with Ayuso, you'll note his very good English, surely a legacy of this early American experience. He already has a Grand Tour podium to his name after finishing 3rd at the Vuelta 2022, and earlier this year he won the GC at the Tour of the Basque Country. We'll be rooting for him here at the Duathlon Show. It's going to be a crowded house at UAE though. The main GC leader will be two-time Tour champion Pogačar, who just won the Giro and is aiming to be the first man since Marco Pantani in 1998 to do the Giro Tour double. Then they have Adam Yates, who worked for Pog last year and was also still able to finish third, one podium step below teammate Poggi. And then they have Joao Almeida, who podiumed the Giro in 2023 and just won 2 stages and finished second at the Tour de Suisse. If Juan Ayuso wants a high GC result at this race, he'll have to beat his teammates first. Just as likely, this talented young climber and GC aspirant will have to sacrifice his own ambitions in order to ride for the red-hot Pogačar. That's it for the Americans who won't be there, the Americans who will be there, and the will-be-theirs who won't be American at the Tour de France this June and July. But let's not forget the 2024 Tour de France Femme, the women's edition of the race. Taking place from August 12th to the 18th, this race will follow the Paris Olympics. Since it's a while from now and start lists are still up in the air, I can't tell you which American women to look out for. But speaking of the Olympics, we can do a micro preview of the cycling events at that big sporting occasion. The USA women have 2 spots at this Olympics, with Chloe Dygert and Taylor Knibb racing both the time trial and the road race. Dygert is the current time trial world champion and will come into the Olympics as a favorite for that event. She's also racing on the track in the team pursuit event. Knibb has a fascinating story. She's not even a pro road cyclist, she's actually a pro triathlete who qualified for Paris 2024 in the triathlon events long before she qualified for the cycling events. She punched her ticket for the road events by winning the US National Time Trial Championships in May. Taylor Knibb has actually never ridden a single professional cycling road race. Imagine your first ever cycling road race being the Olympics road race. Wow. I think Knibb's qualification is incredible and awesome, and I'll be pulling for her, as well as Dygert, who is probably the nailed-on favorite for the gold medal in time trial. I hope they both do well. Allez, allez, ladies. The USA men have 3 spots at the Olympics. We've already met 2 of the team, Brandon McNulty and Magnus Sheffield, both riding the TT and the road race. The 3rd member of the team is also the only rider doing the Tour de France Homme and the Olympics, Matteo Jorgensen. He'll only be riding the road race on August 3rd. The 13 days between the end of the tour and that day should be enough for Matteo to recover, keep that TDF fitness peak going, and come into the road race mega strong. At least I hope it goes that way for him. My optimistic prediction for the men would be a McNulty top 5 in the Olympics TT, a Sheffield top 10 in the TT, and then Matteo Jorgensen on the podium for the road race. Maybe bring a nice bronze medal to show the folks back home in Boise. We shall see. As Kevin Garnett once said, anything is possible. Thank you for joining us on the Duathlon Show today for this Tour de France American preview with Olympics Digestif. Merci beaucoup. In case you're wondering, no, there's no duathlon event at the Olympics, which is a real shame. There is a World Championships for duathlon though. Go listen to the Duathlon Show episode titled, How Do the World Championships of Duathlon Work? To learn more. Enjoy the Tour de France, everyone. We'll be back before too long with more cycling, running, and duathlon content. Stay dry, everyone.
You can follow The Duathlon Show on Twitter and YouTube at The Duathlon Show. Questions or comments? TheDuathlonShow@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a good rating and review on the platform where you found it, and tell your friends. You can support The Duathlon Show by donating at ko-fi.com/TheDuathlonShow.